So thank you very much for this invitation, of which I'm very proud, as it's about time to reconsider and redefine cybernetics, even in the history of philosophy. We can reconfigure the whole history of philosophy, particularly Leibniz. Leibniz has been considered by Norbert Wiener, the founder of cybernetics, as the first cybernetician, as the first philosopher of cybernetics. So my intent is to go deeper into this inspiration that Wiener finds absolutely important, and to, I hope, to transform, to turn Leibniz from being a rationalist or a vitalist into a philosopher of process, a philosopher of cybernetics. It's interesting that both Leibniz and Wiener had similar destinies, being successful for a while and seeing their success decline due to similar reasons. Let's say Leibniz being caught up in the Cartesianism that meant to make a distinction between materialism, mechanicism, and vitalism, mistaking Leibniz as a vitalist. In the case of Wiener, his idea of finding in nature a technique that would explain the internal force that moves matter was taken as an obsession for control, typical of the Cold War, of the post-war anxiety. So it will be interesting to see how we can use both inspirations to give more momentum to cybernetic, a philosophy of cybernetic. I now share my screen. Okay, so this is a first quote by Wiener on Leibniz, the most general inspiration, let's say, that he finds in Leibniz. He says, if I were to choose a patron saint of cybernetics out of the history of science, I would have to choose Leibniz. So let's see why. In another book, he says that Leibniz can be considered as a cybernetic because of his ideas of communication, computation, and automata. So this cybernetic view in Leibniz work, of course, he says, however, not completely Leibnizian. We'll see how Leibniz on the one side sees similarities, on the other side he tries to distance himself from him. In any case, this similarities, this association seems to be quite strong. What is that makes Wiener think this way? Because if we have all the machines and all the automata function as a clockwork that is purely mechanically, modern automatic machines possess sense organs. So we have to see how it is possible for machines to possess a sense organ, that is to receive messages from the outside, from the environment that guide their behavior. So new machines having sense organs are information machines. Let's see what this means more in detail. This is a very quick view on what cybernetics means in terms of dynamics. What is a cybernetic system? It is a system that is able to govern itself. This system is not just the effect of a cause, but this system having a direction to somewhere. This direction, which means it's a living system, or it is a moving system, a system that moves. It cannot move only by something external that is called in determinism a cause of which it would be an effect. But it moves itself. It's able to regulate itself. How? because once proceeding and receiving from the outside of itself an information, it automatically goes back to correct the factor that disturbs the direction toward the equilibrium. This going back, this constant recursivity makes of the system an effector. That is an effect that becomes a cause. What is the difference between the model of cause-effect and the model of effectors? The cause is external to the effect. The effector is internal as a cause. It's an internal cause. So this is what makes the system autonomous with respect to any external cause. This going back is also called the feedback. It's a constant feedback loop that can be considered in terms of positive when going back needs an increase of energy, negative feedback when going back means a decrease of energy that makes the equilibrium, the direction toward a homeostatic condition, more probable. The dream of having these internal mechanics, internal dynamics that makes a system move is an ancient dream from Aaron from Alexandria to Leonardo. They dream of a system that moves itself, also called the perpetual motion. As we can see here, the balls, just by dint of gravity, goes down, but the momentum that the wheel receives will make the wheel up, and gravity will make it go down. So there's a constant exchange of negative and positive feedback. Going back to Wiener, in Wiener's times, at the end of the 40s, he makes a perpetuum mobile which uses electricity, and this is what he calls a palomilla, a tortoise, an animaloid, whose motion depends on the voltage. It goes toward or away from the source of light. Its software modifies its path according to the outside information. A random motion produces a variation in light and its perception as if it had the sense organs. In a way that Palomilla continues to modify its choices as if it were alive. When the perception and choice may be metaphoric, Palomilla moves independently of its creator. This is an update of the ancient dream of a machine moving itself. Leibniz, going back to Leibniz is a typical Renaissance man, or as Wiener calls him, a universal genius. He receives many different inspirations from Ramon Lull's Ars Magna, which he translates into Ars Combinatoria or Ars Characteristica, which was an attempt to turn all possible information into symbols. Combinations of symbols would guarantee the universality of knowledge, universality of information. Again, we have an automatic device that could replace human arguments and subjectivity. There's something that does not need anything external to accomplish a task. Leibniz himself, when he went to Paris, he was together with Denis Papin, the pupil of Huygens. Together, Papin and Leibniz make a steam engine. So again, an automatic device through which the feedback, positive and negative, the piston going up and down, guarantee the reproduction of energy. One of the first steam engines, which of course didn't work very well, but this is how Leibniz is clearly a philosopher of technologies, a philosopher of transformation and progress, that he also calls actually human progress. He makes, on this way, a reckoner that is a first computer, which is of course completely mechanical, that he calls calculus ratiocinator, so a calculation that reasons independently of any human intervention. He wanted to write on it superior to man, envisaging the ability of the future computers. How does it work? It works through a row of cylinders that are moved by this wheel, which is visible here. That is, the wheel going up and down corresponds to numbers, but the numbers are they result from on-off states. As you can see here, we have off states that are replaced by on states, and this is apparently the number 3. By moving the wheel up, we are going to add to that number 3 other numbers. This computer is quite efficient. It can make additions and multiplications even of 3 digits. And it is the first attempt to turn numbers into a binary logic, a binary mathematics, which of course many have already considered to be a proto-computer using a binary logic, on and off states, infinite combinations of on-off states that make numbers. Another inspiration in early 1700, Father Bouvet, Jesuit, being one of the many Jesuits who go to China, makes him a gift, the chart of the oracle of Peking. Leibniz, of course, immediately sees a similarity with his reckoner, because by using only an infinite combination of yin and yang, broken line and whole line, we can have many possible numbers, and therefore many possible results. So information is the result of an automatic, again, combination of numbers, of on and off states. So I'm going to reread these inventions and these conceptual frames, the 3 main principles that are connected to Leibniz: sufficient reason, the indiscernibles, and pre-established harmony. Sufficient reason is the general view that every actual event or matter of fact has its own particular unique reason to occur. This was dismissed by the Cartesian Newtonian mechanics, according to which matter needs something external and universal as a cause to move. Matter itself doesn't have any way to find its own reason to exist. Matter has no reason, has no telos, has no aim, has no purpose. The indiscernibles, if 2 entities are indiscernible, they are the same entity. Here, Leibniz responds to Spinoza in his dialogue with him. They have to solve the Cartesian dualism, and whereas Spinoza concludes with one substance, Leibniz concludes that there must be many substances that would alone explain the variety of matters of fact. Matters of fact cannot be considered either illusions or cannot be reduced to effect of one cause. So if matters of fact exist, they exist because they are many. You see how this means. Pre-established harmony, the most controversial of principles, because some say that this is a deus ex machina. When Leibniz is unable to understand this teleology, this everything having a purpose or sufficient reason, he resorts to a God that pre-established the harmony, the order of the universe. But Leibniz is quite aware that this is impossible. There cannot be that the world is a creature of creators, both in the sense, in the theological sense, or also in the human sense, having the human being the center of action and of meaning of matter. We'll see how these can be reread. We start with sufficient reason. It is said in Discourse of Metaphysics, it is the the most basic and famous way in which Leibniz distances himself from Descartes. The laws governing the behavior of bodies involve a concept of force, a living force, a force vive, that cannot be extracted from the concept of body. If we reduce motion, if we reduce matter to motion and body, there's something that cannot be explained. How these bodies come together, how they can be transformed, and the force is reduced to a geometric cause that leaves the actual behavior of matters of facts unexplained. Teleological automation, if we take out from the analysis, from the description of the world, the final cause, which is exactly what Newton did with the Aristotelian final cause, we fall into a contradiction or an absurdity. Expelling the final cause would be as if, in explaining a great prince's victory in a successful siege, a historian were to say, it was because the small particles of gunpowder released by the touch of a spark, etc. All of these mechanical general causes were the only explanation for the prince to win a battle, which is absurd. So now we have to solve the vitalism, the issue of vitalism, because this is exactly why Leibniz seems to follow the other side than mechanicism. If you are against mechanicism, you must be a vitalist. Norbert Wiener himself is aware of it and says, this article, My Quantum Mechanics, about Leibniz and Haldane, Leibniz as a basis for quantum mechanics. So of course, obviously he sees in this final cause, force vive, an anticipation of the electronic power. It is traditional to represent Leibniz's theory of monads as a pluralistic spiritualism or vitalism, but so he thinks that we can do that. We divest Leibniz's language of its protective layer of Orthodox Christian phraseology. The misunderstanding is probably due to theology. We shall see that it might as well be called a pluralistic materialism. Wiener even calls Leibniz a materialist. In other places, he says the issue of the difference between living, non-living, vital and mechanical, this distinction, this divide, is purely a badly posed question or even a semantic choice. So we simply choose to make a distinction between what is living and what is inanimate or simply material. The two cannot exist separately because in this case, even today, we have to wonder how we pass from the one to the other when we need to understand emergence of life. Emergence of life. In another passage, Leibniz uses the example of a ray of light, takes it from the phenomenon of refraction. According to a Newtonian paradigm, the path of light is a straight line that is the shortest. This is the geometric paradigm. According to Leibniz paradigm, the path of light doesn't take the shortest path, but the easiest, because it is, Leibniz considers, a matter of fact. It is not a geometric, theoretical entity, or the most determined or unique path, even in relation to curves. So it can even curve if there's an obstacle that compels the ray of light to change its direction. So it depends on external information, and step by step, it changes direction if needed, which means that even a ray of light has a purpose, has a teleological direction. So it cannot be just a mental reconstruction, theoretical, of a reversible geometric figure, but it is a real system that has a direction and an irreversible destination meant to be reached. A ray of light is launched in space, and this launch being launched means that it must go in a certain direction and must defend this direction, resisting any possible obstacles. So what have these, all of these in common? The reckoner, the steam engine, the automatic combinations of symbols, the events that are singular, that is a matter of fact, have in common the same natural strategy, an internal or living force. But now we have to defend Leibniz for vitalism. Living simply means self-organized, as the ray of light, the reckoner, etc., organize themselves to defend their direction, taking information from outside, and force simply means an ability to transform itself on the part of the system. So what happens to the human here, the famous, I think, by Descartes, the human, the rational human agent is not the origin or the cause of understanding and knowledge and making sense of matter, but it's just one part of other systems. The reckoner, if the reckoner and the E-King make the human mental effort irrelevant, the steam engine makes the muscular effort unnecessary. The human is just part of a system that is at the same time living and non-living, natural and technological. It's a machine itself, as we are going to see. So this means that the cause being external to the object and therefore not explaining the ability of the object to keep itself together, to keep its homeostasis, is replaced by the effector, as we said. Any transition that is a linear from cause-effect implies an action at a distance and a discontinuity that makes the relationship mysterious or magic, as it was said. Circular transition instead, from effector to effector, implies a continuity, no distance, because there's a constant touch between systems that make every system, every cybernetic system in immediate contact with the next. What comes to mind is the swarm intelligence, in which each element has to anticipate the motion of the other system, of the other elements, in order to govern the whole superorganism or super system. Let's go to the indiscernibles. In this course, it is said that several considerable paradoxes follow from the fact that the substance is one, amongst others, that it is never true that two substances are entirely alike, differing only in being two rather than one. We have to add that this number of substances remains the same, although substances are often transformed. So we have to understand how these substances must be many because they must be recognized in their differences, but at the same time, how is it possible that these differences keep the identity of each of them and the identity of the whole? The machines of nature, now again, a way to overcome the great divide between mechanical and natural, because we have machines of nature, or whatever exists in nature is a machine, a mechanical system. That is to say, living bodies, when we find the life in these systems, but even concerning living bodies, we have still machines. The living machines have this difference, that they are machines in their smallest parts, ad infinitum. That is, an organism, differently from a reckoner, has an infinite part of an infinite number of systems. And this doesn't mean that it's really infinite, because an organism, we cannot imagine it as infinite, but what is infinite is the inability to turn these number of systems into something observable that is finite. So it's more, I think, an epistemological comment. Once we see that there is a world of created things, living beings, animals, entelechy, souls in the minutest particle of matter. A minutest particle of matter has the same force viva, living force, that life, living beings have. In quantum mechanics, nevertheless, Leibniz's great principle of the identity of indiscernibles is retained. We can update Leibniz's principle of the indiscernibles, but here Leibniz starts having a doubt. Why? Because, of course, concerning electrons, it is not true that they are completely discernible. So there's some extent of indiscernibility from each other, of course, because of their constant exchange of energy, which sounds Leibnizian and not at the same time. So individualities cannot be completely separable. We can say, like Wiener says, that the modern philosophy is more subtle than Leibniz. Of course, it's more subtle because he has the sufficient technologies to solve the problem of the discontinuity being continuous. We'll see how this paradox can be addressed. So the issue of indeterminacy needs to be solved because here, Leibniz appears to be a determinist. In the monadology, it is said that the universe is regulated in a perfectly orderly manner, and every monad, so monads are these pluralist, plural materialist, the result of this pluralist materialism by Leibniz. Every monad is a mirror in the universe in its own way, of the universe in its own way. Here, I think Leibniz solves Wiener's doubt, because if every monad is a mirror to the other monads or to the environment, is at the same time continuous and discontinuous. Its continuity is given by communication. A mirror is an immediate information with the other monads, and at the same time it is discontinuous because each mirror must be placed in a different perspective. In fact, there is another way Leibniz has to define monads as different perspectives of a whole. Wiener himself said that communication is a subtle consequence of optical interaction. Why optical? Because a mirror is optical, but at the same time it is automatic. This optics does not concern the human eye. In this course, in fact, we find another answer to Wiener's doubt, because these substances, in order to keep themselves together in their place, in order to keep their identities, and by transforming constantly themselves, they obstruct and limit one another. This is how the energy, this force vive, works in them or between them. Consequently, we can say that in this sense, they act on one another. They adjust themselves to one another. It can happen that a change that raises the level of expression of one substance lowers that of another. If we have an increase of energy in one, a decrease of energy must occur in the other one. Of course, this is intuitive because we can imagine this mutual limitation that matters of fact or monads or systems exert on one another. So what is this? What are these mirrors? I would like to consider them as pervasive observers, going forward, maybe into the second order cybernetics, because here we have to understand the reflexivity. That is, how is it possible for something for a system to receive information? Don't we need an observer? A mirror is a kind of automatic observer. So the apparent contradiction, seeming contradiction between discrete continuum can be composed by this idea of a constant mutual detection that systems have with one another. Can be related to what in second order cybernetics is called double contingency. That is, every system is contingent to the other system or to the environment, and therefore it is this double contingency that causes or compels the systems to adjust to one another. the monads are closed in themselves, exactly, but this occurs in Auto-Poiesis when it is said that each system is in a condition of operational closure. Brunella Antomarini, Luhmann, they do not conceive a representation of the environment as being internal, but as being exclusively relational. So they do not need to have knowledge of something outside. This is a traditional, deterministic, rationalistic illusion of knowledge, which might be solved like this. In the traditional model, a subject, a cause, knows an external object, that is matter, but this doesn't work, but it can be replaced with combinations of networks that adjust automatically to one another through an internal force, in which internal doesn't mean that we give force a space or a place in the system, because it is a purely relational. Mirror is a relational metaphor. So again, we can explain monads in terms of emergence, because Leibniz envisages the elementary monads in which they move only through attraction-repulsion. The minimum, the least of their force vive, which makes it, of course, a very strict similarity to the electron, in which the only force, the life of this force is a pure resistance, and resistance as retroaction, because if resistance were just passive, we wouldn't have any effectors. But the retroaction is the ability for every system to gain new energy. From these elementary phases, we can understand the increasing complexity in the forms of a greater number of monadic relationships, until we arrive to the human, in which this energy can be called freedom, and in which the new technology represents a constant construction of resistance, of retroaction on the linear entropic direction. The third and last, pre-established harmony in the summa rerum is said, assuming that everybody exists in a plenum. In a plenum, one body cannot be expanded without another being contracted. Insisted on this. One body cannot be contracted without another being expanded. And all of these dynamics is assumes that the same quantity of motion can be conserved or must be conserved. So we have here to understand how a constant transformation and motion, which is clearly explained by a plenum, that is, there's no void, there cannot be any void, but all monads interact with one another by touch, by immediate touch. But all of this must explain also the conservation of energy. How is that possible? That the conservation of energy is kept, not because the systems are closed, because the systems are open, but even in this case, the conservation is allowed by the constant self-correction of the amount of energy. Continuism, therefore, can be defended in a way that's nothing to do with vitalism. If everything is full, which means that all matter is interlinked, again, the continuum is explained by these networks and these interlinked that makes every system exist. In such a plenum, any movement must have an effect on distant bodies which are in contact with it. Again, a mirror that we uses optics in the sense of touch, in the sense of rest. As a result, everybody feels the effects of everything that happens in the universe. So we can have machines with the sense organs, and we can have as sense organs, if sense organs means to detect the external environment and act or retroact consequently or accordingly. Wheeler, in fact, says Leibniz may be regarded as a forerunner of field theory. What he calls a plenum can be called a field. For him, the world is a plenum and there is no action at a distance. A monad can only mirror a distant monad through the intervention of entities between a cause and effect. There cannot be a void, it must be plenum. So this is what is between cause and effect is intermediate causes, intermediate effectors that simply destroy the idea of an original cause and external. However different the reproduction of living beings and of machines, even living systems are not completely living. All living beings and no living being is completely living, both on the microscopic level, of course, because cells are made of atoms, etc., but also in the microscopic sense, because every organism receives from the outside its energy. For instance, an animal organism is filled with at least 50 minerals that make it work, and minerals are not living. So all things are continuous if they have sense organs, but the sense organs can be expanded to everything, every matter of fact, or to matter in general, if they are conceived as resonance, and resonance is a form of touch intuitively. What is pre-established here? We have to liberate Leibniz from this misunderstanding. It is not anything external, but it is what happens step by step by each system when it tries to keep the accord with the others and making the whole supersystem go ahead. What does organic mean? It means organized, correlated, a mutual correlation. Or in terms that the philosopher Yukui uses, organizing inorganic. This is how today we can talk about the organizing inorganic, which perfectly defines or redefines the moment. Now there's a final issue. Wiener has a critique to Leibniz. Knowing Leibniz probably deterministic, rationalistic tradition, he thinks that the organism cannot be like the primates with its pre-established harmony. It takes a pre-established in terms of predetermined whether it is by God or by a human agent. Contingency seems to be jeopardized here. I think that Leibniz has an answer to that. He can answer Wiener by saying that if pre-established harmony seems to destroy the difference between contingent and necessary, we have an answer, because I say that whatever happens in accordance with this antecedent is not necessary. We have two ways to necessity. One is the theoretical, mathematical, logical, and the other one is concrete and unique and material, in which we only have assurance. So we can be assured that what happens tomorrow, tomorrow will, because there's no necessity. And it is repeated later that it is true that there are always reasons for their choices, but those reasons incline without necessitating. It's a matter of propensity, inclination, direction that is teleological, not in the sense of vitalist, but in the sense of taking a direction automatically. Beautiful example from this vision of the earth, of the origin of the earth. It seems that this globe once was on fire. The rocks forming the base of this crust of the earth are scoria, remaining from a great fusion. In their entrails are found metal and mineral products which closely resemble those emanating from our furnaces. So the furnaces are just a product of nature or an imitation of what happens in nature. And then we have the sea being made liquid as oleum, just as a cathartic oil, and so on and so forth, until we find steam given by fire becoming water, absorbing salt, and making the oceans. All of these considers every effect to be an effector, considers the recursivity, that is the circularity that keeps everything being in accord with everything else. But this doesn't mean that all of this is pre-established, and this vision makes it very clear. In fact, he adds, after the fire, one must conclude that the earth and water made ravages no less. So, however the equilibrium is reached, there will be another disequilibrium to solve. So, every equilibrium, every homeostatic condition can be but temporary and contingent, and be defended and protected from the next threat. Effectors of retroaction causes, which is the recursivity image, but this doesn't mean that the repetition of the same. Of course, Leibniz cannot mean that there's something identical to itself to return. But it only means that given that what is possible exists in terms of energy, and this energy must sooner or later produce the same actual, the same matter of fact, the same in the sense that similar systems, because not all possibles can be realized, like this himself says. What occurs, it doesn't occur out of infinite possibility. It can, and this also would explain the famous phrase, why something rather than nothing, or this is the best of this means nothing absolutely universal or fixed, but we do the universe, matter does what it's best for it. Better than this it cannot do. So potential means teleological, actual means homeostatic, redefining Aristotle. So I try to turn the principle of sufficient reason into the internal automatic inclination of force speed as a factor that causes itself the preservation of motion and existence in terms of retroaction. So in this case, organic means organized. It is reduced to organized, common to all matters of fact. The indiscernible correspond to a necessary plurality of substances as automatic and autonomous force governing all things and explaining their being many rather than one, by virtue of systemic relationships in a condition of double contingency. In this case, organic means coordinated, and not coordinated once and for all, but a constant search for coordination. Pre-established harmony can be translated into anticipating the effects in order to keep homeostatic. So every system establishes the next move, and in order to do that, it has to anticipate what makes it survive and avoid what would destroy it. Whatever persists owes it to its going back to causes. Again, there's a constant self-observation that can be shown, thanks to Leibniz, as belonging also to all levels of matter. In this case, organic means anticipating. I would like to conclude with an interesting comment, an interesting analysis that Leibniz makes concerning these dynamics of living force that is well known by hunters, fishermen, or even children, and that is superior even to the greatest mathematician. So I hope I have done some contribution to the possibility that Leibniz can cast light on a philosophy of cybernetics. Of course, so much more can be said, but I hope we can do it on the discussion. Thank you very much.